She was a social media darling, adored for her parenting tips, praised for her unwavering devotion to her son. With every post, Kashira D'Lynne Wilburn promised her followers a glimpse into her picture-perfect life. Bright wigs, infectious southern charm, and parenting hacks that made motherhood seem effortless. But behind the gleaming ring lights and the polished filters was something far darker, something that would leave a chilling mark on the world. One game. One suitcase. And one child dead. How does a mother go from bedtime stories to murder? How does a child's innocent laughter turn into an eerie silence? The terrifying truth is, no one saw it coming, not until it was far too late. "This is what happens when you lie to mama," she said, the words echoing in the room, before she zipped him in and spun him across the floor. The game, it seemed, was just beginning. What followed, what Kashira did next, would shatter any illusion of the loving, devoted mother she had carefully curated for the world to see. And when the truth finally came out, it would leave everyone wondering, how had it all gone so horribly wrong? Before we begin this deeply disturbing story, like this video and subscribe for more true crime stories that expose the hidden darkness in seemingly perfect lives. Stay with us. What you're about to hear will change everything. To her nearly 400,000 TikTok followers, Kashira D'Lynne Wilburn was the epitome of modern motherhood. With her vibrant, brightly colored wigs, infectious southern charm, and viral parenting hacks, she had carefully curated an image of a life that was both enviable and aspirational. Every video she posted painted a picture of the ideal mother, a woman who effortlessly juggled faith, structure, and love. Kashira's brand was built on advice that promised the secret to a perfect, well-disciplined child. As a former preschool teacher turned full-time content creator, she used her experience to give tough love parenting tips and strict discipline routines, all with a backdrop of soft gospel music and brightly colored decor. Her catchphrase, "Mama Gone, Raise a King," quickly became a slogan that resonated with thousands of young mothers, especially those who found strength and solace in her message. Her videos were a steady stream of advice: how to handle tantrums, how to discipline without breaking your child's spirit, and how to balance God's grace with firm guidance. T-shirts, mugs, and even baby bibs with her signature catchphrase flooded the market. She had become a brand, a lifestyle. Some praised her for her boldness, for embracing motherhood in all its demanding, messy beauty. Others, however, began to whisper that something about Kashira didn't feel right. Beneath the surface of perfectly edited moments and radiant smiles, there was an unsettling tension that some viewers began to sense but couldn't quite explain. At the center of Kashira's world was her 6-year-old son, Zamari Wilburn. He was featured in almost every one of her videos, always with a big smile, always obedient, always performing. He danced to viral songs, cleaned the house alongside his mother, and recited Bible verses with a precision that far outpaced his young age. Kashira proudly boasted that Zamari was mature for his age, and often gushed about how well-behaved he was. "Never talks back," she'd say with a smile, her followers applauding the perfection of it all. The picture Kashira painted was one of harmony and happiness, a mother and son in sync with each other, living a charmed life. To the outside world, they were the ideal family. Their life was especially admired among Kashira's core following, young, religious, Black single mothers who saw in her a reflection of their own struggles and triumphs. They followed her not just for advice but for a sense of community and empowerment. Kashira had become their beacon, a woman who had taken on the world with flair and grace, raising her child on her own and seemingly thriving. Yet, behind the camera lens and carefully curated posts, there were cracks. The veneer of perfection that Kashira presented was only that, a veneer. For those close enough to see the edges, the pressure was beginning to show. But for her audience, it was easy to ignore the subtle signs. After all, they were captivated by the flawless image she put out for the world to see. The Kashira D'Lynne Wilburn that her followers adored was a carefully constructed version of a much more complicated woman. What her fans didn't know, what they never saw in her glossy videos or faith-filled captions, was the darkness she carried inside her, the weight of a past she never once mentioned online. Kashira had not always been the picture of poise and maternal strength. She had survived a childhood filled with chaos, abandonment, and pain. After her mother overdosed on heroin in a motel bathroom when Kashira was just 7, and her father vanished soon after, she became a ward of the state. She bounced from one group home to another, ran away more times than anyone could count, and spent her teen years oscillating between juvenile detention centers and psychiatric hospitals. By 16, she was officially diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, a diagnosis she rarely accepted, but which followed her like a shadow. The violent outbursts, the unstable relationships, the self-harm, all pieces of a life she had buried beneath wigs, filters, and parenting slogans. The father of her son, Quincy Delroy Stanton, was never part of her TikTok narrative. Kashira erased him from their lives with the kind of ease that only trauma can perfect. In her videos, she was a single mother by divine design, as she proudly proclaimed. But those who knew her before the fame, old friends, neighbors, people who had watched the relationship between her and Quincy unravel, told a different story. Quincy had been arrested twice for domestic abuse. The fights were loud, violent, and regular. When he finally left, some said Kashira broke completely. Others said she simply found a new mask to wear. Offline, the cracks in Kashira's perfect world began to deepen. Behind the camera, Zamari wasn't the bubbly, Bible-quoting child millions had come to adore. He was quiet, withdrawn, skittish around adults. Neighbors in their apartment complex began noticing bruises, on his arms, his legs, once even on the side of his face. They heard yelling late into the night. Screaming. Doors slamming. Some said they heard the boy crying through the walls, pleading for someone to stop. Junella Wilburn, Kashira's estranged mother-in-law, had long feared for her grandson's well-being. She had tried again and again to intervene, filing petitions, making calls, begging someone, anyone, to help. Each time, she was met with red tape, closed doors, and polite dismissals. The system moved slowly, if at all. Despite her claims and concern, custody was never transferred. Kashira always emerged unscathed, her narrative intact. In 2023 alone, the Division of Family and Children Services received 3 separate reports about Kashira. But each time caseworkers arrived, she had already cleaned the apartment, coached Zamari, and put on her best smile. The place was spotless. The boy said all the right things. She wore modest clothes, quoted scripture, offered sweet tea. Her charm was disarming, her composure unnerving. "She's just a misunderstood single mom," one worker reportedly wrote in their notes. Case closed. Again. No one ever stayed long enough to see the bruises fade. The video was only up for 3 hours, but that was enough. On May 4, 2024, Kashira D'Lynne Wilburn uploaded a TikTok titled "New Discipline Hack, Suitcase Time." The caption read, "Tough love, but necessary. Y'all gentle parents can keep scrolling." It opened with her holding her phone in selfie mode, her face framed by one of her neon pink wigs, nails freshly done, a playful smirk tugging at her mouth. Behind her stood a large brown suitcase, already partially unzipped. She turned the camera to Zamari. "Tell them why you are going in the suitcase," she said, in a sing-song voice. The boy stood stiff, his voice barely above a whisper. "I lied to Mama." "That's right," Kashira said, snapping her fingers. "And Mama doesn't play with liars. Now get in." Zamari hesitated. She nudged him. He climbed in, small enough to fit with room to spare. She zipped it up slowly, dramatically, laughing as she did it. "This what happens when you lie to Mama," she said. "Now stay still. Don't make me roll you like a tire." The suitcase jostled slightly as Zamari moved inside. She laughed again, this time louder, and said, "Oop. It's a roller coaster ride now." With a sudden push, she spun the suitcase across the living room floor. It hit the wall with a soft thud. Kashira giggled, clearly entertained. The video cut out before the scream started. But the internet had already seen it. Dozens had screen recorded it. Comments ranged from concern to horror, but the most chilling detail came later: audio files pulled from her phone after her arrest. Short, broken recordings of Zamari's voice crying out, "Mama, it's hot in here. I'm sorry. I can't breathe." Then sobbing. Then silence. According to the autopsy report and investigators' timeline, Kashira left her 6-year-old son in that suitcase for nearly 6 hours. She placed it in the corner of the room, turned on a fan, and ignored the sounds. She watched TV. Ate dinner. At some point, she painted her nails. When she finally unzipped the suitcase, Zamari wasn't moving. His body was limp, his skin cold and damp with sweat. His lips had begun to turn blue. Rather than call 911, she lifted him out, dressed him in his favorite Spider-Man pajamas, laid him in bed, and pulled the blanket over his still body. Then she cleaned up. The next morning, she posted a photo of herself, face beat, lashes full, her smile wide. The caption read, "Motherhood is finally peaceful." Janella Wilburn had a feeling. She always did when something was wrong. For days, her calls had gone unanswered. No good morning texts. No new videos of Zamari reciting scriptures. Just silence. She'd seen that silence before, once when her son Quincy was spiraling, and again when Kashira had disappeared after a court hearing. This time, it felt heavier. So on May 8, Janella made the 2-hour drive from Atlanta to Macon. She prayed the whole way. When she arrived at Kashira's apartment, the blinds were drawn. The car was in the driveway. No answer at the door. She knocked harder. Still nothing. A neighbor, Mr. Grant, came outside after hearing the banging. He'd seen Kashira just once in the past few days, taking out the trash late at night, looking dazed. He helped Janella wedge open the back window and climb in. The smell hit her first. It was sharp, sour, suffocating. She gagged. The apartment was dimly lit. Toys were scattered on the floor. The TV was playing an old cartoon. And there, on the couch, sat Kashira in a robe, legs tucked under her, a bowl of cereal in her lap. Her wig was lopsided. Her eyes were empty. Janella's voice trembled. "Where's Zamari?" Kashira blinked slowly, barely looking up. "He's in bed," she said. "He's just tired." Janella moved fast. She rushed to the bedroom and stopped cold. The small body under the Spider-Man blanket didn't move. Didn't breathe. The room reeked of urine and decay. She screamed. By the time the police arrived, Janella was outside on the curb, sobbing into her hands. Paramedics pronounced Zamari dead at the scene. Inside, Kashira was calm. When officers entered, she turned the volume down on the television and looked up at them like they'd interrupted something casual. She didn't resist. She didn't cry. She stood, hands out, wrists ready for the cuffs. When asked what happened, her voice was flat, almost bored. "He lost the game," she said. "That's all." The news hit the internet like a lightning bolt. Within hours of Kashira D'Lynne Wilburn's arrest, the story was everywhere, plastered across TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and national headlines. TikTok mom kills son during discipline game became the rallying cry for shocked viewers who had once adored her. Hashtags like #JusticeForZamari, #CancelKashira, and #ProtectBlackChildren flooded every platform. Her follower count, once a mark of influence and adoration, became a digital battlefield of grief, outrage, and betrayal. Former fans scoured her page for signs they'd missed. Videos once praised as innovative parenting now seemed unhinged. Her tone, her forced cheerfulness, her catchphrase, "Mama gone, raise a king," sounded haunting in retrospect. Clips that once inspired applause were now being dissected frame by frame for subtle cues of abuse. Some loyalists clung to a more sympathetic narrative. They claimed Kashira was clearly mentally ill, that she had been begging for help in her own way, and that society had failed her. But for every one of them, there were hundreds calling for her to rot in prison. "She used that baby for likes," one commenter wrote. "She was never a mother, she was a brand." It only got worse when more evidence surfaced. Several deleted TikToks, recovered by internet sleuths, showed a disturbing pattern. In one, Zamari is visibly trembling as Kashira yells off camera. He stutters while trying to recite a Bible verse, and she snaps, "Get it right before I snap you straight." In another, she shows a closet door while joking, "Y'all know this the timeout room, Zamari hated in there, but it work." Even more damning were the voice notes leaked from her iCloud. One recording captured Kashira whispering aggressively, "You gonna respect me, even if it kills you. I made you, I can break you." In another, Zamari sobs, "Please don't put me back in the dark, mama. I'll be good," followed by a long silence and the sound of a door slamming shut. As the recordings made their rounds, public anger morphed into something deeper, collective shame. How had no one seen this coming? How many red flags had been filtered, auto-tuned, and captioned for engagement? The debates were intense. Television panels invited psychologists, parenting experts, social workers, and cultural commentators. Some argued that Kashira had slipped through the cracks of a broken system, that her trauma, mental illness, and isolation as a black single mother were ignored until it was too late. Others were less forgiving, saying she knew exactly what she was doing, exploiting her son's suffering for content, and basking in internet fame until it destroyed them both. Discussions of race, poverty, and parenting saturated the national discourse. Was Kashira a cautionary tale of unaddressed trauma? Or was she a cold-blooded abuser hiding behind an algorithm? What everyone agreed on was this: Zamari had been failed. By his mother, yes. But also by every adult, neighbor, caseworker, follower, and algorithm that had seen him suffer and kept scrolling. The courtroom was packed, yet deathly silent. For weeks, the trial of Kashira D'Lynne Wilburn had gripped the nation. Reporters filled the benches alongside grief-stricken family members, child advocates, and former fans desperate for closure. A woman once hailed as a model of single motherhood now stood accused of murdering the very child who made her famous. Kashira sat at the defense table, dressed plainly, her once colorful wigs replaced by a court-issued bun. She showed little emotion as the prosecution laid out a case as airtight as it was horrifying. They detailed the night of May 4th, presenting autopsy photos that revealed Zamari's cause of death, asphyxiation, compounded by blunt force trauma and signs of prolonged distress. A medical examiner testified that Zamari had likely cried himself into exhaustion before passing out, his lungs crushed by the pressure inside the suitcase. The prosecution painted a damning portrait: a mother obsessed with control, driven by fame, and emboldened by her social media clout. They played video after video, some still publicly available, others recovered from her phone and cloud storage, each one chipping away at the image Kashira had carefully crafted online. The videos showed a scared little boy trying to earn affection, and a woman who disguised cruelty as discipline, all for likes, shares, and validation. The defense pleaded for leniency, framing Kashira as a product of generational trauma and untreated mental illness. Her lawyer spoke of her childhood, abandonment, foster care, psychiatric holds, and a deep-rooted fear of being unloved. They argued she had been failed by every institution long before Zamari ever was. They claimed diminished capacity, citing her diagnosis of borderline personality disorder and alleged dissociation during the incident. But 3 court-appointed psychiatrists testified that Kashira was fully aware of her actions. Her online persona, they argued, was not the product of delusion, but calculation. She knew how to present herself, how to manipulate perception, and how to weaponize her child's suffering into monetized content. Then came Junella. The courtroom held its breath as she walked to the stand. Grief clung to her like a second skin. Her voice cracked, but she spoke with the unwavering strength of a grandmother who had tried, and failed, to save a life. I begged the state, she said, tears falling freely. I told them something wasn't right. I told them she screamed at him at night, that he had bruises. But every time, she cleaned up, smiled for the workers, and they said she looked stable. They told me I was being bitter. Now he's gone. And my heart is buried in that tiny casket. Her words shattered the courtroom. Several jurors wiped their eyes. Even the judge paused before continuing. After 6 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 4 hours. On November 17, 2024, Kashira D'Lynne Wilburn was found guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, aggravated child cruelty, and felony neglect. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Kashira showed no tears. No remorse. As the sentence was read, she glanced at the courtroom gallery, at Junella, at the reporters, at the sea of people who had once idolized her, and smirked. Leaning toward her attorney, she whispered audibly, "He knew the rules." The room erupted. Gasps, cries, and angry murmurs echoed as deputies led her away. But for many, it was too late for justice to feel like victory. The damage was done. The boy they failed to protect was gone. And all that remained was a haunting memory wrapped in a Spider-Man blanket, and a nation reckoning with how easily evil can wear a smiling face. This case is a haunting example of how the digital world can blind us to real-world horrors. Behind every filter, every parenting hack, every viral quote, there was a child dying a slow, silent death. And no one listened. It's easy to scroll past suffering when it's dressed in filters and hashtags. It's easy to believe in the curated version of someone's life, especially when it's wrapped in inspiration, fake vulnerability, and cute kid moments. Kashira knew that. She mastered the art of performance. She sold motherhood as a brand, as a lifestyle, and people bought into it without questioning what might be happening once the camera turned off. Zamari's pain didn't start with the suitcase. It began years earlier, in the bruises, the silence, the empty stares during TikTok dances, the forced smiles as his mother demanded obedience at all costs. He was a child hidden in plain sight. And the tragedy is, the signs were everywhere. Neighbors heard the screams. Teachers noticed the anxiety. His grandmother begged for intervention. But every time the door was opened, Kashira presented a spotless house, a charming smile, and a calm voice. And the system, again and again, looked the other way. What does it say about us, our culture, our institutions, our collective conscience, that a mother could turn torture into content and be rewarded with likes, views, and brand deals? That her cries for validation were heard louder than her son's cries for help. It's more than a personal failure. It's a societal one. We have built a digital world where performative cruelty can be masked as discipline, where trauma is monetized, and where children like Zamari become collateral damage in their parents' quest for attention. So now we're left asking ourselves, could Zamari have been saved if someone had spoken up louder? If the state had acted faster? If fans had stopped idolizing and started investigating? What if someone, anyone, had looked past the content and seen the pain? And what about the next child whose story hasn't gone viral yet? This case is not just a tragedy. It's a warning. It's a call to action. We must be more than just spectators in a digital coliseum. We must be the ones who notice, who report, who refuse to stay silent. Because real love doesn't come with rules, games, or zipped-up suitcases. If this case shook you, like and subscribe for more stories that uncover the hidden darkness in seemingly perfect lives. And more importantly, look closer. Ask questions. Speak up. Because somewhere out there, another Zamari is waiting to be heard.